Hey guys, it's Emo here. I'm just doing a quick update for my YouTube channel. I've been playing my Moonkin a bit now recently, but I'm sticking with my Rogue, I guess, as my main. I've been checking a few things for Mutilate, found out a few things as well. So I'll just give you guys a quick update here. Basically, I'm using a slow offhand dagger right now for my offhand. I've originally intended to do this, but I just never got around to doing it. The reason you do this is because it increases the offhand damage done by your Mutilate, since Mutilate hits with both weapons. And it basically just increases your damage in general, I guess. Usually for PvE you use a fast offhand for both combat and Mutilate, because as your offhand you put in instant poison, and it procs more from your envenom. But since you only envenom every now and then when you're Mutilate in PvP, putting an instant poison on your offhand is pretty useless, especially when it will only do about 1k damage when it procs. It may sound like a decent buff of damage, but you're better off with wounding poison to reduce the amount they heal. Purely because wounding poison is already a base as 1k damage. Now instant poison is a base of about 2k damage. So you get half the damage from your wounding, but you also get a debuff on the target, which is really handy. Also, another downside of using instant poison is that in PvP you're not white hit capped, so your offhand will miss a lot of the time. So having instant on your offhand is not as useful as people might think. The reason you use it in PvE is because you have a higher hit cap, and you're stacking hits, so you basically can hit the target enough. And you're on a boss, so you envenom the target enough for instant poison to be proccing all the time. But in PvP, as in combat, you're going to want a slow offhand for your Mutilate spec. I suggest you get this one if you have no other slow offhand. This is called the Blade of the Unmaker. This is from LFR and it drops off Deathwing. It drops quite a lot, probably as much as the combat axe as well, and it's a really good keeper, guys. If you ever find yourself in looking for raid, I suggest you try and roll on this, because it's one of the best daggers you can have as Mutilate, as an offhand weapon. The cataclysmic weapons are 1.4k top end damage. This is 1.3k, so it's not as bad as a ruthless weapon, but it is better than it. Also a new update, guys. In terms of thrown weapon, I use a slow one because I play combat. If you're playing Mutilate, I suggest you get a fast thrown weapon, purely because you can use it faster. It's good against rogues and duels, and it's good to keep targets in combat. The faster the thrown, the better it is, but as combat you want a slow thrown weapon, purely because it increases the damage of your thrown. Because as combat you get 75% increased damage on your thrown and offhand weapons, which means that you end up doing a deadly throw of about 15k, if not more, when you're in about my gear, on resilience targets. On non-resilience targets, it's probably over 20k. Also, something I forgot to mention in my previous videos, guys, you're going to want to stack a tiny bit of mastery. You don't want to go all out stacking this, but if there's a few pieces of gear you can get that have mastery, it's good to have. You can also reforge it if you want. I'd say between 35 and 45% mastery is good. If you go over 45%, that's a bit ridiculous. If you don't have over 35%, then you need a bit more. I'm capping mine off about 39-40% mastery right now. That basically just increases your poison damage, guys, and if you have about 40% mastery, then your poisons are going through resilience. Now, on top of all this, I've also got to mention about the spell penetration. People have been commenting on it, and I've been doing the research and everything. The 220 spell pen that I had earlier was because I was making dueling videos against a few shamans, and that's purely just against shamans for the dueling videos. As in general for Mutilate, you're going to want about, let's say about 90 to 150 spell pen would be alright. Not over 150 and not below 90. I'm stacking about 120 right now. I got a spell pen gem in my gloves and enchant on my cape. Apart from that, most of my gear is all stacking crit rating. Also, a little thing here I've gotten from it was either from Ramekin inside Oldham or from Queen Therazane in Deepholm. you get from the rep, you get the shoulder enchant for mastery. The helm enchant, you're better off getting the agile crit one, but the shoulder enchant, you might want to get the mastery one from either Therazane or Ramekin rep. And as usual guys, my trinket is the 780 agile trinket. I forgot to mention in my previous video, this actually adds up to about 3.5% crit rating when it's fully activated. Now, this means that you can drop out some crit rating in some of your gear if you're already over 30% crit. I'm stacking about 35% crit with my trinket procced. So, and do note that I have my alchemist potion as well, 80 agility. Purely from being an alchemist, you get this when you max alchemist level. Also, one more thing I want to mention, guys, is about the mending enchant on my main hand weapon. Stacking haste as mutilate is completely pointless. You do not need it at all. Stacking haste as any spec is completely pointless unless you're PvEing. In PvP, you're better off stacking increased agility or crit rating. Now, people have been commenting on this mending enchant, and I would just like to tell you guys that this isn't all that bad an enchant, if you think about it. It's only good for Mutilate. As combat, I'd suggest you get a different enchant. As Mutilate, it's based on your playstyle. If you want to get a damaging enchant, go for it, but I like the survivability aspect of Mutilate a lot. I say this because in Deadened Nerves, you can get up to a maximum of 10%. I'm sitting on 7% for 2 out of 3 right now though. But let's say you max that out, that's 10% reduced damage, and another 6% reduced damage when recuperates up. On top of that, your recuperate is imped, which means it should tick. If you're in my gear, it should tick for about 6.8, 6.9 every 3 seconds. And then you add mending on top of that, and that's an insane amount of survivability you have right there. And then I got my improved sprint to break out of snares, which means I can not as kiteable. People can't kite me as well as they think. Another great thing about speccing into improved sprint, guys, is that most people don't expect a Mutilate rogue to have it, which means frost mages will start casting frostbolt right in front of you if you're frost novid, and you pop improved sprint and kick it, and they're screwed for quite a while. This has won me quite a few battles, and it's a really good and handy move to have since we don't have Shadow Step as Mutilate. And on top of the whole mending enchant, guys, it's got no internal cooldown, and since I'm stacking crit, it heals me for about 1.8 to 2k every time it ticks. Since it has no internal cooldown, I've actually seen this proc 3 times within the same second. So that's about a 5k heal in 1 second, guys. And then adding that on top of my Deadened Nerves, and adding that on top of my improved recuperate, that's a really big heal. As for the heal itself, it procs a lot, as I've said, and it also procs off dots, which means your nature procs, your nature damage from deadly poison, your bleed ticks, all of that can proc mending, which is why I use it, because it can proc a lot of the time. As sub, I suggest you get the landslide or avalanche. As combat, I suggest you get the same thing, or mongoose, even if you wanted to, just to look cool. But as Mutilate, I'd recommend mending, because it's a really, really handy enchant, and hell, it's pretty too. Anyway guys, that's just the update for my channel. Hope I make some more videos soon if I get the chance, and I'll catch you later. Peace. New note guys, just forgot to mention in my earlier video, your Phantom Knives is really, 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 really important for your Mutilate spec, and I'll show you why. Now, say this target here. With Phantom Knives, I'm using Mind Numbing on my Phantom Knives. Now, the reason you use 3 different poisons, one for each of your weapons, is because when you proc your Phantom Knives, say Mind Numbing has about 70% chance to proc in my spec, so there's a 70% chance of getting Mind Numbing on the target when I use Phantom Knives. Now, when Mind Numbing actually procs on the target, there you see, it spreads all the other poisons onto the target at the same time. Now the reason it does this is because of your spec. Go into go into Vile Poisons. If you have a proc from your Fan of Knives poison on the target, it will instantly apply both melee weapon poisons on the target. Which means by spamming Fan of Knives, I can put 5 stacks of daily poison and 3 other poisons on the target. And this is really handy in Arena. Do note you don't want to break CC with this, because it does apply deadly poison dots. But this will stop casters from being able to cast as much because of the both mind numbing and the wounding poison. It also has got the crippling proc and the deadly poison proc, which allows you to swap target easy as well. So say you have deadly poison on one target, you can easily swap to the other target to redirect and then do an envenom straight away to add like a little bit extra burst. Also I'm Fan of Knives glyphed, so I can do it from this far away. Now this is a massive amount of distance, guys. This is 12 yards, which means if I'm frost novid by a mage, I can easily use my Fan of Knives, apply poisons to them when they're running away. This adds crippling, and you just properly sprint. And do note in my spec, the sprint just removes snares, so now I can easily run up to them, kick them, or whatever. But this is a lot of applications. I'll leave it to you guys to figure out sort of what situations you can use it in. I might choose some videos of it. But the main thing you're going to use this for is for bleed kiting, guys. Say you put up your bleeds on a target and you want to be able to move backwards and kite them. You're going to want to add your bleeds and refresh them, because your poisons, you need to refresh all your poisons on the target. Now if you're glyphed, Rupture will last for 20 seconds at 5 points, but your poisons will only last for about 11 seconds. So you're going to have to Fan of Knives to refresh them. And having this distance on Fan of Knives is really, really handy. And that's basically it.